The GST Council has made its decision to keep that 28% GST on online gaming intact. That tax is going to be levied on entry-level amounts. This as opposed to the feared taxation on every bet. And the Finance Minister has also shared how the Council is aiming to implement the tax by the 1st of October this year, and then a review after 6 months after the implementation begins. So the Council is also trying to work out a framework for overseas e-gaming platforms. And the government may bring amendments in the GST Act to include online gaming in the current monsoon session of Parliament. So by way of announcements, there were plenty coming in from the Finance Minister at the end of the GST Council's meeting. She was addressing the media. These were the larger takeaways from what she said.
Valuation of supply of online gaming and actionable claims in casinos may be done based on the amount paid or payable to or deposited with the supplier by or on behalf of the player, excluding the amount entered into games, bets out of winnings of previous games and bets, and not on the total value of each bet placed. Entry, whatever they pay to get, let's say, the chips, will be the amount, but not on what they pay in each game. So one simple example that I can give you is 1,000 rupees is given, chips are taken, you go into the casino, you pay the first 100 and play. In case you win something, you've got a 300 in your hand, which means net is 1,300. That 300 doesn't get taxed. It is the 1,000 that you get yourselves taxed.
So with an example, the Finance Minister has explained how exactly it would work in a casino. When you talk about the face value of those transactions and the bets and exactly how it would play out in a casino. My colleague Prakash was at that media conference. He's joining us from Delhi to tell us about the larger highlights that we got earlier this evening. If you can walk us through them.
Yes, it's a confirmation of our news break as well. As we told our viewers that there'll be no rollback when it comes to 28% GST on full face value in the context of online gaming and casino. So the Council has decided that there will be no rollback, but yes, Council has approved wider framework as to how 28% GST on online gaming casino would be levied, whether it will be on entry level or on every bet. The Council has decided to charge 28% GST on full face value on entry level. So it's a partial relief to the online gaming companies as well, as the GST Council is not going to charge a GST on every bet. So that is something which the GST, online gaming companies have got some received some relief from the Council. Moving ahead, Council has also decided to review the implementation, as some states have raised some issues. States like Goa, Tamil Nadu, Sikkim, Delhi. These states have had some apprehension on some of the provisions. So the government, the GST Council has decided to review this whole structure. That means the implementation of this decision in 6 months, and the government is hoping to implement this decision by October this year. In addition to that, GST Council has also approved wider definition of online gaming. A new definition of online money gaming has been decided to include under online gaming category, which means deposit of money, digital assets, virtual assets can be considered as online gaming, and depositor or buyer will have to pay 28% GST going forward. When it comes to the issue that is with regard to offshore or overseas online gaming platforms, Council has decided to make it mandatory for offshore or overseas online gaming platforms to register in the country, and if they will not do so, these online gaming platforms will be banned. So these are the important decisions that the GST Council has taken today.
All right, fair enough. Thanks very much for filling us in as to the larger takeaways from the GST Council meeting and the announcements made thereafter. To decode what has been decided upon, Sachin Menon is joining us. He's a senior advisor at KPMG, and he's joined by Nikhil Suri, partner at Ernst Young at EY. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us this evening on this edition of India Development Debate. Let me begin by asking, if you were an investor looking at the gaming industry in India favorably, and you were approaching it before the GST Council decided to arrive at the kind of decision it did today, would you be as keen to become a part of the industry if you're looking at parking in that kind of money today as opposed to perhaps 6 months ago? That question to Sachin Menon first.
Well, it is a very easy answer to this question that the attractiveness of the online gaming industry investment is gone down because there is a 28% levy coming, which was so far not there. So therefore, it is indeed a dampener for this industry. But the question is that when you have a 28% GST on air conditioners and Pepsi and Coca-Cola, etc., why not on the gaming industry? So this conclusion was more or less clear even before this meeting that government is not going to step back. Mm-hmm. Indeed, it will have an impact on the industry as such, and of course, in the interest in the gaming.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. There's no taking away from the damage, but how much of a damage would this do for a sunrise industry, for a developing economy? Nikhil Suri, what's your reading?
Yeah, I completely agree with Sachin, that, the impact of this measure is significant on the gaming industry, compared to what it was, existing before 6 months. I think the amount of taxation has exponentially increased with this move. So earlier, the gaming industry was sort of getting taxed on, if on a deposit of 100, if let's say the gaming industry in general was charging 10, as GGR, as the gross gaming revenue, the GST incidence on the overall basis was 1.8. Now, with this measure, as decided today, the taxation will move to 28. So therefore, it's a manifold increase on that, and therefore it will significantly impact the gaming industry. And by some estimates, it could be 3 to 5 years and thereabouts. But I think this move has been in the making for a few years, and I think even in the last council meeting, yes, there was a fair amount of deliberation and viewpoints which were shared, and I think the government, yes, does have a societal sort of a perspective to it. Mm-hmm. Which is obviously to be kept in mind.
Yeah, but there were dissension. There was a certain amount of dissension coming in from the smaller states like Goa and Sikkim and Delhi. They're seeking a rethink, a review of the 28% levy and applying it on GGR is something that they have suggested again, not on the full face value, which is currently going to be the case. How significant are these voices? How impactful is this decision going to be on their economy? A large part of it relies on this kind of revenue. Sachin Menon, you want to take that?
Yeah, well, there are states like Sikkim, who has a significant revenue coming out of and Goa, coming out of online gaming or casinos, etc., will be definitely impacted. But the fact of the matter is that GST revenue is growing leaps and bounds every year, and every state's finance are getting better. And there is this shock of this 28%, according to me, will die down after 3-4 years, because people will tend to accept that that is the contribution they have to make to the government, and therefore I think this will thin down over a period of time. But the fact of the matter is that some of those states having major revenue coming out of this online gaming or lotteries, etc.
Yes,
it is going to impact their finances.
Of course, absolutely. And there were such voices, Meghalaya not least of which. But now that they've decided that it's going to be on the full face value, and do weigh in on this, Nikhil Suri, because there could be the possibility, and that's what the industry was fearful of, that it could be on every bet. How much is that controlling the kind of damage that was envisaged?
Yeah, I think it's a fairly welcome move, from what it was till say about yesterday, subsequent to the 50th GST Council meeting. I think the measure that got introduced at that point of time was to be taxing every bet, which meant that even your winnings in every round would get taxed. So I think the industry will definitely be relieved, from there on, or at least parts of the industry will definitely be relieved that it's on the deposit value and not on the winnings, and therefore not every bet is getting taxed again and again. So in that sense, I think it's a step. I think it's a good step. It's a positive step for the industry. And keeping in mind the revenue augmentation objective and the consistency objective also. So in that sense, it's a positive step towards achieving some balance between the revenue and the industry objectives. I think it does give, if the existential crisis till yesterday was for the entire industry, I think it's definitely come down for the number of players. There is, from what I'm heard across, from industry segments, there is still a segment of the industry which feels that they may, even after this positive measure from the government, they may still face an existential crisis. And to that extent, I think the measure of the move of the government, to have a review after 6 months, and I'm sure, when they do the review, they will keep the revenue augmentation as well as the impact on the industry, both the perspectives in mind.
But for
so
the
I think
industry, don't you think, Nikhil, that this was much more about an operational challenge? Because to be able to tax every bet would have been an operational nightmare.
Yes, I think it would have been, again, if you look at the segments, which are getting taxed, so lottery wouldn't have had any impact. Casinos definitely would have had an impact.
Yes, essentially.
Because, in a physical sense, to be able to track bets and to be able to tax, before the bets,
Yes.
I think would have been pretty much impossible, and which is what some of the states, like Goa and Sikkim were advocating. From an online perspective, theoretically, I would believe, and I'm not an expert pretty much on that it could have been theoretically possible, but I'm sure, it would have required a significant operational overhaul there. But I think even more importantly, I think the impact from a financial viability perspective, or by taxing every bet would have been extremely, extremely significant on the online gaming space. And as I said earlier, it could have resulted in a crisis of existence. So I think in that sense, from the move to now sort of just the tax, the full face value of the deposit, I think will be welcomed by a fair section
so that
of the
many
industry.
are saying is the saving grace from the kind of announcements. Sachin Menon, for one, do you agree? And as far as the future is concerned, there are several stakeholders at play within the gaming industry. There will be certain pockets that will be hit harder than the others. Can you tell us which ones stand to lose out the most, and perhaps some which will not be as affected?
Yeah, so there are certain loopholes which need to be plugged. And number one is casinos where the chips are being issued, because there is a physical kind of issue of chips, etc. So how you are going to monitor that effectively is one challenge. Second thing is offshore gaming companies. How do you control the offshore gaming companies who are not having any presence in India? So government has done this controlling the online platforms for electronic commerce operators by bringing in a rule already that anybody who is dealing with B2C need to compulsorily register, even though they are not present in India. And if they are not doing that, then they will be blocked. So similar things will be implemented here as well. So the question is that so areas like online gaming, I think the implementation of this may not be for the domestic companies may not be a big issue.
Right.
Whereas casinos and the betting, these are the two areas where government have to identify the ways and means to see that every transaction is accounted. That's a real challenge for the government as well as for the gaming companies.
Yes, because the implementation is going to be a little tricky. Do you think that's the reason why they've decided, Nikhil, to push back, deciding on the entire offshore part of the gaming business?
Yeah, I think, from a timing perspective, they've set out a date of 1st October
That's
as
right.
a target date for implementation, which is just about 2 months away.
Yes.
So in that sense, I mean, and that's the time period, given the construct of the GST legislation, that is pretty much the bare minimum time that one would require to pass the amendments through the center and all the states across India, right? So in that sense, from a timing perspective, it's pretty much immediate as it can get. I think it will be interesting to see, the measures that the government has announced. That how will they ensure that the overseas players come within the net and declare themselves within the GST framework. That will be interesting to see. And in case, and what is the fallback option, and what are the regulations that the government will enforce, that in case some of the offshore players do not conform to the GST legislations from day one, or even end of, let's say, a 90-day period, then what is the kind of regulation that will be put in place to ensure that the offshore gaming companies do not have any added advantage over the Indian players. So I think that will be an important piece that the government is working upon. I think it seems to be extremely conscious of that. And I think it will be interesting to see how do they implement it in the weeks ahead. And that's also something to do with the inherent structure of internet these days. That sometimes it is sometimes a challenge to control everything which is spreading through the internet. So therefore, it's important for the government to have adequate measures, which I'm sure they're planning to have them in the next few weeks.
Sachin Menon, what do you expect to happen within the 6 months that, after implementation, they want to observe how exactly this plays out? What are the elements that you think could possibly go wrong for them to kind of reconsider several aspects of what they've decided on?
I think mainly they will take stock of how implementation effective from the perspective of the government would be the major concern. Within 6 months' time, they will be in a position to come understand, figure out that whether it is successfully done or not. Unless and until the government decide that the prize money will be given only through the digital payment, it will be difficult for them to control this. And there are states like Tamil Nadu which said that there should be a separate rule for those states which are banned the gambling or online gaming. So they may consider that too. But in any case, I don't expect any other than the administrative measures being reviewed. I don't think there is any shift in the policy of the government in terms of taxing these games. And the matter of all disputes with reference to whether it's a game of skill or game of chance is prospectively put to rest. I think the litigation of the past may continue.
Correct.
So now the disputes on this matter will come to an end with this new amendments which is proposed.
That's right. But now, as far as the entire business of online gaming is concerned, perhaps they have to re-strategize as well to keep in mind all the new laws that are being put in place in terms of rejigging their operations to suit the requirements that are statutory in nature. Nikhil, what exactly will they need to do to realign themselves?
Yeah, I think there will be no, one single answer to that, unfortunately, because, within the online gaming space, there will be different subsets to it. For example, they could be, a set of organizations or a set of platforms, where the gaming is a one-time activity, or the bets, are placed on a one-time sort of a basis. versus segments and which may cater to slightly more affluent segment, versus segments which are catering to a much smaller ticket size and so on and so forth. So I think it will really vary from across platforms. And depending on where are they in terms of their revenue models, in terms of their profitability, and so on and so forth. So I think different players will have to sort of look back, reflect, and re-strategize depending on where they are in the journey. It's still a startup space, right? It's still in its infancy, nascency,
Yes.
and I think the business models are still evolving, as we speak. And I think with this, levy, I think they will. A lot of the players will need to look harder and faster just to see how do they get, into black from red. So,
Yes.
so I think different people will have to adopt different measures.
Like we said, there are several parts of the business of online gaming, and how exactly they're going to be able to keep the business running in black is something that is going to be top of mind with the kind of mop-up that the government would be hoping to get from this. Sachin Menon, they've also talked about this new definition for online money gaming. How do you think that's going to work?
Yeah, so that is mainly to kill this dispute and litigation, because
Exactly.
they are planning to bring expand the actionable claim definition, which include all this game of skill or game of chance, etc., so that this issue will not be disputed anymore. But in my view,
Yes.
if you look at the liquor industry and cigarette industry, they have been taxed to death, but they never died. And on the contrary, they were growing despite all the high level of taxation. So the gaming industry also will recover in a matter of 1 or 2 years' time.
Well, the decision is made. 28% it is. It is going to be on the full face value of transactions. Yes, there is a little bit of glimmer of hope because not every bet is going to be taxed, and that's the word that's coming in. So tender mercies. The online gaming industry was looking at the outcome of the GST Council meeting today. And of course, now we have clarity on how exactly they plan to go about it. 6 months is the time that they are giving after implementation for a review of how this entire process works. And that's going to be watched very closely, whether there will be a review that relooks the entire formula that has been arrived at, how it applies, etc. That remains to be seen. But already the smaller states have put out their voices of dissension as far as the decision of 28% is concerned and how it's going to be applied. We'll watch the place very, very closely. But thanks very much for joining us with your perspective, Nikhil and Sachin. Thanks indeed for joining us on India Development Debate. With that, it's going to be a wrap on this show. But of course, we'll be back same time again tomorrow. Until then, we hope you take very good care of yourselves. Good night.